From Richard Pryor secretly battling multiple sclerosis to theaters installing metal detectors after opening night violence, Eddie Murphy's directorial debut was plagued by more real-life drama than its 1930s gangster plot. Behind the glamorous period costumes and star-studded cast lurked lawsuits, feuds, and tragedies that would make even the fictional mobsters blush, including the shocking fact that this comedy sparked actual riots and changed movie theater security forever. Fact 1. Eddie Murphy's one and only directing disaster. When Eddie Murphy stepped behind the camera for Harlem Nights in 1989, he thought he was ready to conquer Hollywood as a director. After dominating the box office throughout the 1980s with hits like Beverly Hills Cop and Coming to America, Murphy felt confident enough to write, direct, produce, and star in his own period gangster comedy. What he got instead was a filmmaking experience so miserable that it permanently scared him away from the director's chair. Murphy later admitted that his approach to making the movie was completely wrong from the start. In interviews following the film's release, he confessed that he threw it together real quick, without giving the script the time and attention it needed. The rushed writing process created problems that plagued the entire production, making what should have been a dream project feel more like a nightmare for everyone involved. The experience was so unpleasant that Murphy made a public vow he has kept to this day. "I just wanted to direct, just to see if I can do it," Murphy explained, "and I found out that I can't, and I won't do it anymore. And the biggest thing is, I didn't enjoy doing it." He went on to clarify that while he thought the directing itself wasn't terrible, the real problem was the screenplay he had rushed through. Murphy's disappointment wasn't just about the technical aspects of filmmaking. He had envisioned Harlem Nights as a chance to work alongside his comedy idol Richard Pryor in a collaborative creative partnership. But that dream quickly turned sour when their working relationship became tense and difficult. The combination of script problems, production challenges, and personal conflicts created such a negative experience that Murphy decided directing simply wasn't worth the stress and frustration it caused him. Fact 2. Richard Pryor's secret MS battle. During the filming of Harlem Nights, Richard Pryor was hiding a devastating secret that would later explain his troubling behavior on set. The legendary comedian had been diagnosed with multiple sclerosis in 1986, but he kept this information completely private from the cast and crew, including Eddie Murphy, who idolized him, and had specifically written the movie as a chance to work with his comedy hero. Multiple sclerosis is a serious disease that affects the central nervous system, causing symptoms like fatigue, difficulty with coordination, and problems with memory and concentration. For someone like Pryor, whose career depended on his quick wit and physical energy, the diagnosis was particularly cruel. The disease was already beginning to take its toll on his performance abilities, but nobody on the Harlem Nights set understood what was really happening behind the scenes. Murphy noticed that something was wrong with Pryor during production, but he had no idea what was causing the problems. Instead of the collaborative partnership Murphy had dreamed of, Pryor would simply show up to set, deliver his lines with minimal effort, and leave immediately afterward. His energy seemed low, and he appeared uninterested in the creative process that Murphy had hoped they would share together. Years later, after Pryor had gone public with his diagnosis, Murphy finally understood what had been happening during those difficult filming days. He was sick with multiple sclerosis by then, but nobody knew it was going on, Murphy explained in interviews. "I never put it together what was happening till afterwards. So it was kind of sad, that part of it." The realization helped Murphy make sense of Pryor's distant behavior and lack of enthusiasm, turning what had felt like personal rejection into something much more understandable and heartbreaking. Fact 3. The comedy legends actually hated each other. What Eddie Murphy thought would be the ultimate comedy collaboration turned into one of the most uncomfortable working relationships in Hollywood history. Murphy had idolized Richard Pryor for years, hanging pictures of the legendary comedian in his home and studying his performances religiously, but when they finally worked together on Harlem Nights, Murphy discovered that his hero wanted nothing to do with him. The tension became obvious almost immediately during production, and Murphy was devastated to learn that Pryor actively resented his success. In a brutally honest interview with director Spike Lee, Murphy revealed the painful truth about their relationship. "The only reason he did the movie was he got a big payday out of it, and trust me, the brother does not like me," Murphy admitted. "And I used to have more Richard Pryor pictures up than Elvis Presley." Murphy had entered the project expecting a mentorship and creative partnership with someone he considered the greatest comedian of all time, but instead found himself working with someone who treated him coldly and professionally. Pryor would arrive on set, say his lines with minimal effort, and leave immediately without engaging in any of the collaborative creative process that Murphy had hoped for. The situation was made even more painful by the fact that Murphy had specifically created the movie as an opportunity to work with Pryor, writing the character of Sugar Ray with his idol in mind. According to Pryor's former bodyguard, the comedian felt that Murphy had copied his style early in his career and believed that Murphy's massive success in the 1980s had contributed to his own career decline. This professional jealousy created an atmosphere on set that was far from the joyful collaboration Murphy had imagined when he first conceived the project. Fact 4. Opening night sparked real shootings and riots. The opening night of Harlem Nights on November 17, 1989, turned into a real-life crime scene that rivaled anything in the movie itself. At the AMC Americana 8 Theater in Southfield, Michigan, a suburb of Detroit, 2 men were shot in the parking lot during what witnesses described as violence that coincided with a shooting scene in the film's opening sequence. According to reports in the Detroit Free Press, the timing of the real shooting was eerily connected to what was happening on screen, creating a disturbing parallel between fiction and reality. The incident also injured a 22-year-old woman who panicked during the chaos and ran into traffic, leaving her in critical condition at Providence Hospital 2 days later. Less than an hour after the initial shooting, police arrived at the theater to find a 24-year-old Detroit man who had shot at an officer, and when the officer returned fire, the gunman was wounded right there in the theater parking lot. The situation inside the theater became even more chaotic when police decided to stop the movie projection to search for suspects connected to the violence. This decision triggered something nobody expected: an hour-long riot inside the theater itself. Moviegoers who had come to watch a comedy about 1930s gangsters suddenly found themselves in the middle of real violence and civil unrest. The problems weren't limited to Detroit either. In Richmond, California, another violent incident occurred at a different theater showing Harlem Nights, where 17-year-old Marcel Thompson was fatally shot in a similar fight. One local resident, Deshanna Watson, described the chaos at her theater, saying there were so many people and so much commotion that authorities had to stop the movie 3 times during the screening, turning what should have been an entertaining night out into a frightening experience that nobody would forget. Fact 5. The movie introduced metal detectors to theaters. In an unprecedented move that would change movie theater security forever, the AMC Americana Theater in Southfield, Michigan decided to install metal detectors after the violent incidents that erupted during Harlem Nights' opening night. This response marked one of the first times in American cinema history that a movie theater chain felt compelled to use airport-style security measures to protect moviegoers from potential violence. The decision came after the theater experienced multiple shootings, injuries, and chaos that left management scrambling for solutions to prevent similar incidents in the future. The violence had been so severe and unexpected that theater executives realized traditional security measures, like having ushers and basic crowd control, were simply not enough to handle the situation they had witnessed. According to a Los Angeles Times report from November 22, 1989, the AMC Americana not only planned to install metal detectors, but also removed the film's title from its marquee as an additional precaution. The theater chain was taking no chances with future screenings, recognizing that the combination of the movie's content and audience reaction had created a dangerous situation that required extraordinary measures. The installation of metal detectors at movie theaters was almost unheard of at the time, as cinemas had traditionally been considered safe, family-friendly entertainment venues where the biggest security concern might be someone sneaking in snacks or trying to theater hop. The fact that a single movie's opening night could prompt such drastic security changes highlighted just how serious the violence had become and how concerned theater owners were about their ability to protect customers. This security innovation would unfortunately prove to be ahead of its time, as metal detectors in movie theaters would become more common in later decades, as concerns about public safety in entertainment venues continued to grow across the United States. Fact 6. A mayor tried to shut down theaters. Boston Mayor Raymond Flynn became so alarmed by the violence surrounding Harlem Nights that he seriously considered taking the drastic step of shutting down movie theaters in his city. Flynn personally witnessed numerous fistfights breaking out among crowds of moviegoers as they left theaters after watching the film, and the level of aggression he observed convinced him that the movie itself was directly responsible for the chaos. The mayor's concerns were not based on second-hand reports or media coverage, but on his own first-hand observations of the disturbing behavior he saw outside Boston theaters. Flynn watched as groups of people who had just finished watching what was supposed to be a comedy film immediately began engaging in physical altercations with each other, creating dangerous situations on city streets that required police intervention. Flynn placed the blame squarely on the movie's content, making a public statement that Harlem Nights was responsible for inciting violence because it glorifies violence. His criticism focused on the idea that the film's portrayal of gangsters and criminal behavior was encouraging audience members to act aggressively in real life, turning entertainment into a public safety crisis. Initially, Flynn threatened to close theaters showing the film entirely, which would have been an extraordinary use of mayoral power and a significant blow to both the movie industry and local business owners. However, after considering the potential legal and economic consequences of such a drastic action, the mayor ultimately decided on a compromise solution that would allow theaters to continue operating while addressing his safety concerns. Instead of shutting down the theaters completely, Flynn chose to significantly increase police security around movie venues showing Harlem Nights, ensuring that law enforcement officers were present to immediately respond to any violence that might break out among moviegoers before, during, or after screenings of the controversial film. Fact 7. Arsenio Hall's bizarre crying man. Character. In one of the strangest casting decisions in comedy history, Arsenio Hall appears in Harlem Nights playing a character so unusual that the film credits don't even give him a real name, listing him simply as Crying Man. This bizarre character is a mobster who becomes so emotionally overwhelmed by his brother's death that he literally weeps while preparing for violent revenge, creating a scene that audiences found both disturbing and unintentionally hilarious. Hall's character discovers his brother Tommy dead in an apartment, brutally murdered with multiple bullet wounds and his throat cut. Instead of reacting with typical gangster stoicism or cold anger, the crying man breaks down into tears while simultaneously loading a machine gun and preparing to hunt down the people responsible for his brother's death. The visual of a grown man sobbing while handling deadly weapons created an absurd contrast that many viewers found more comedic than dramatic. The character delivers memorable lines while crying, including, "He messed with the wrong person's brother," and "Only way you're going home is shot." But the emotional delivery combined with the violent preparation made for an uncomfortable viewing experience that didn't quite fit the movie's intended tone. Hall, who was primarily known at the time for his late-night talk show and comedic roles, brought an unexpected vulnerability to what should have been a standard tough guy mobster part. What makes this casting choice even more peculiar is that Hall was a close friend of Eddie Murphy and had already proven his comedic talents in previous Murphy films like Coming to America, where he played multiple characters with great success. Instead of giving Hall a funny role that would showcase his strengths, Murphy wrote him a part that required him to cry through most of his screen time while threatening people with automatic weapons, creating one of the film's most memorable yet bewildering moments. Fact 8. The original actress filed a $75 million lawsuit. Before Jasmine Guy stepped into the role of Dominique LaRue in Harlem Nights, another actress named Michael Michelle had been cast in the part and signed a contract worth $27,500. However, Michelle's time on the project lasted only 2 days before she was suddenly fired, leading to one of Hollywood's most explosive sexual harassment lawsuits of the late 1980s. According to Michela's account in People magazine, trouble began almost immediately when she arrived at the Paramount lot for rehearsals. She claimed that Eddie Murphy made comments about her professional behavior, saying things like, "You deserve an award for not even looking at me, Michael. Good. Real good." Michelle said she laughed off these remarks because she admired Murphy and wasn't trying to be unfriendly, but the situation escalated quickly from there. Michelle alleged that during the next rehearsal on April 7th, Murphy asked her out on a date, and when she declined, he attempted to fondle and caress her. When she said no and rejected his advances, Michelle claimed that Murphy stormed off, and soon afterward she heard he was telling people he had fired her, which Paramount Pictures then confirmed. The actress filed a $75 million lawsuit against Murphy, claiming she was terminated for refusing to engage in inappropriate behavior rather than for any performance-related issues. Murphy strongly denied Michelle's allegations, telling Rolling Stone magazine that he wanted someone with greater marquee value and that Michelle wasn't working out. He also pointed out that if someone was going to behave inappropriately, they would try before giving someone the role, not after. Michelle turned down a severance payment offer and eventually took a job at the Gap clothing store to pay her bills until she landed her breakthrough role in New Jack City. The lawsuit was eventually settled out of court for an undisclosed amount. Fact 9. Redd Foxx's final film before death. Harlem Nights holds the bittersweet distinction of being Redd Foxx's final film appearance before his death on October 11, 1991, making his role as the nearly blind craps dealer Benny Snake Eyes Wilson his last chance to showcase his legendary comedic talents on the big screen. Foxx, who was best known for his groundbreaking work on the television series Sanford and Son, brought his signature crude humor and perfect timing to the role, delivering some of the film's funniest moments despite being in his late 60s. The comedy legend's financial situation at the time of his death revealed a tragic irony that would connect him to Eddie Murphy in an unexpected way. Foxx had been battling severe tax problems with the Internal Revenue Service for years, and by the time he passed away, he owed more than $3.6 million in back taxes. The IRS had been so aggressive in collecting these debts that they had seized most of his possessions, including personal jewelry and cash from his pockets, leaving his family in a desperate financial situation. When Foxx died of a massive heart attack while rehearsing for a new television series called The Royal Family, his widow found herself unable to afford even the most basic funeral expenses. The man who had entertained millions of people and broken racial barriers in comedy had been left virtually penniless by his tax troubles, creating a heartbreaking situation for his family during their time of grief. Eddie Murphy stepped in to solve this problem by paying for Foxx's entire funeral, ensuring that the comedy pioneer received the dignified, star-studded send-off he deserved. Murphy's generous gesture allowed Foxx to be buried with the respect and ceremony befitting someone who had paved the way for future generations of African-American comedians, turning what could have been a tragic end into a celebration of Foxx's remarkable life and career contributions. Fact 10. Della Reese's shocking career transformation. Few actresses in Hollywood history have created a more jarring contrast between their most famous roles than Della Reese, who played the tough-as-nails, profanity-spewing brothel Madame Vera Walker in Harlem Nights, just 5 years before becoming beloved as the gentle, wise angel Tess on the CBS series Touched by an Angel. The difference between these two characters was so extreme that many viewers couldn't believe they were watching the same person. In Harlem Nights, Reese's character Vera was anything but angelic, running the prostitution operation at Club Sugar Ray, and engaging in vulgar arguments with other characters throughout the film. She delivered lines filled with curse words and crude insults, including memorable exchanges where she threatened to fight Eddie Murphy's character Quick and told other characters exactly what she thought of them, using language that would make a sailor blush. This rough, street-smart character was a complete departure from what audiences would later know Reese for when Touched by an Angel premiered in 1994. As the supervising angel Tess, Reese became a symbol of divine guidance and maternal wisdom, helping troubled humans find their way back to faith and righteousness. Her warm, nurturing presence on the show made her a household name and earned her millions of devoted fans who saw her as a spiritual figure. The transformation was so complete that many Touched by an Angel viewers were shocked to discover their beloved angel had once played such a crude, aggressive character. Interestingly, Eddie Murphy originally hadn't considered Reese for the Harlem Nights role, but after her audition, he was amazed by her acting abilities and realized she could bring both toughness and authenticity to the part. The role proved that Reese was a versatile actress, capable of playing characters at opposite ends of the moral spectrum, though most people will always remember her as the kind-hearted angel rather than the foul-mouthed Matt. Fact 11. The script was plagiarized according to lawsuits. Eddie Murphy found himself facing another plagiarism lawsuit in February 1990 when Long Island writer Michael Green filed a $35 million suit claiming that Harlem Nights was based on his stolen screenplay. This legal challenge came just 1 month after Murphy had lost a highly publicized lawsuit involving his previous film Coming to America, creating a pattern that suggested the comedian might have been systematically stealing other writers' work. Green, a 35-year-old aspiring screenwriter from Hempstead who had been writing scripts for 16 years without selling anything, claimed that his agent at the William Morris Agency had specifically asked him to write a screenplay for Eddie Murphy and Richard Pryor in 1988. Green said he submitted his script titled A Halloween to Remember, but the agency rejected it without returning his copies, which he found suspicious. According to Green's lawsuit filed in federal district court in Uniondale, he began hearing rumors that the script for Harlem Nights bore a strong resemblance to his own work, prompting him to take legal action. Green insisted that his lawsuit wasn't a publicity stunt, telling reporters that he was simply trying to get justice and compensation for what he believed was theft of his creative work. The timing of this lawsuit was particularly damaging for Murphy because it came so soon after the Art Buchwald case, where a judge had ruled that Coming to America was indeed based on Buchwald's story treatment, King for a Day. That earlier case had already established a troubling pattern of Murphy potentially using other writers' material without proper credit or compensation. Paramount Pictures attorney Les Fagan responded by stating that they had reviewed both Green's screenplay and the Harlem Nights script and found no similarity and no basis for the lawsuit, but the legal challenge added to growing concerns about Murphy's creative process and originality. Fact 12. Historic road markings anachronism. Despite Eddie Murphy's efforts to create an authentic 1930s period piece, Harlem Nights contains a glaring historical error that sharp-eyed viewers have spotted during one of the film's chase sequences. When Quick is being pursued down a highway by Tommy Small's brother, the road clearly shows double yellow center lines dividing traffic lanes, which creates a major problem since this type of road marking didn't exist in 1938 when the movie is supposed to take place. The mistake is particularly noticeable because the double yellow lines are prominently featured in several shots during the chase scene, making it impossible for historically minded viewers to ignore once they spot the error. These bright yellow markings stand out against the dark asphalt and draw attention to themselves, inadvertently reminding audiences that they're watching a modern production rather than an authentic glimpse into the past. The historical reality is that road markings in 1938 were completely different from what appears in the film. During that era, center lines on American highways were painted white, not yellow, and they consisted of single broken or solid lines rather than the double yellow configuration that became standard decades later. The federal government didn't introduce double yellow center line markings on United States highways until 1971, making this particular road feature anachronistic by 33 years. This type of continuity error is especially problematic in a period film because it breaks the carefully constructed illusion that viewers are witnessing events from a different time. Period movies depend on authentic details to transport audiences back in time, and when modern elements accidentally appear in historical settings, they can pull viewers out of the story and remind them that they're watching actors on a movie set rather than experiencing genuine historical events. The mistake suggests that the production team may have been more focused on the dramatic elements of the chase scene rather than ensuring every visual detail matched the 1930s setting. Fact 13. The off-camera comedy was better. In one of the most telling admissions about Harlem Nights' quality problems, Eddie Murphy himself confessed that the real entertainment happened when the cameras weren't rolling, with the spontaneous comedy between the legendary performers far surpassing anything that made it into the actual movie. Murphy revealed that the jokes and natural camaraderie shared between him, Richard Pryor, Red Fox, Robin Harris, and Della Reese during downtime on set were much funnier than anything that was in the film. This behind-the-scenes magic was particularly driven by Red Fox, who Murphy described as a really funny dude who would have the entire cast and crew screaming with laughter during breaks between takes. Fox's impromptu comedy routines and off-the-cuff remarks created an atmosphere of genuine hilarity that the scripted material simply couldn't match, suggesting that the film might have been more successful if it had captured more of this natural comic energy. Murphy specifically remembered how Richard Pryor and Red Fox would be laughing off stage during the whole movie, creating moments of pure comedy gold that unfortunately never made it to the screen. The irony wasn't lost on Murphy that some of the greatest comedic talents of multiple generations were gathered together for this project, yet their best work was happening in the spaces between the official filming. The situation highlights one of the fundamental problems with Harlem Nights as a comedy. The formal, scripted nature of the production seemed to constrain, rather than showcase the natural comedic abilities of its incredible cast. While the movie struggled to generate consistent laughs from audiences, the same performers were effortlessly entertaining each other with improvised material that demonstrated why they had become comedy legends in the first place, making the film's failure to capture that magic all the more frustrating for everyone involved. Fact 14. It created the Royal Family TV show. The profanity-filled arguments and comedic chemistry between Red Fox and Della Reese during the filming of Harlem Nights were so entertaining that Eddie Murphy decided to turn their real-life banter into a television series. Murphy was so impressed by the natural comedic timing and authentic relationship between the two veteran performers that he created the royal family specifically as a vehicle to showcase their talents on a weekly basis. The royal family premiered on CBS in September 1991 and featured Fox and Reese as a married couple, allowing them to bring their off-camera personality clashes and humorous exchanges to a broader television audience. Murphy served as executive producer for the show, ensuring that the series would capture the same energy and dynamic that had made their interactions during Harlem Nights so memorable and entertaining to everyone on set. The show represented a significant opportunity for both actors to return to regular television work after years of focusing primarily on films and other projects. For Fox, it marked a return to the medium that had made him famous with Sanford and Son, while Reese got the chance to showcase her comedic abilities in a lead role that would complement her singing and dramatic acting career. Tragically, the royal family would become Red Fox's final professional project. On October 11, 1991, just weeks after the show's premiere, Fox suffered a massive heart attack while rehearsing for an episode on the Paramount Studios lot. Initially, cast and crew members thought he was joking around, as Fox was known for his playful behavior on set, but they quickly realized the severity of the situation when he collapsed and couldn't be revived. After Fox's death, the show attempted to continue without him, but it never recovered from losing half of its central dynamic, and CBS canceled The Royal Family in 1992. Fact 15. Critics chose it as worst film. The critical reception of Harlem Nights was so devastatingly negative that the most influential movie critics in America, Gene Siskel and Roger Ebert, didn't just give it a bad review but actually featured it prominently on their annual Worst of 1989 television special. This placement among the year's absolute worst films was particularly damaging because Siskel and Ebert's weekly show was watched by millions of moviegoers who trusted their opinions when deciding what films to see. Siskel's criticism was especially harsh and specific, as he called the movie racist, sexist, and badly directed, hitting Eddie Murphy on multiple fronts and suggesting that the film failed not just as entertainment but as responsible filmmaking. Ebert agreed with these assessments and added his own criticism that Murphy seemed to be directing the film simply to call himself a director, implying that the entire project was more about ego than artistic vision. The dual attack from these respected critics was particularly significant because they rarely agreed completely on films, making their united condemnation of Harlem Nights all the more powerful and influential. Their criticism went beyond typical negative reviews and suggested that the movie represented a fundamental failure in storytelling, character development, and social responsibility. This critical devastation contributed to making Harlem Nights one of the most critically reviled comedies in film history, with a Rotten Tomatoes score of just 27% based on 37 critics' reviews. The website's consensus summarized the critical opinion by stating that an all-star comedy lineup is wasted on a paper-thin plot and painfully clunky dialogue. The harsh critical reception was particularly painful for Murphy because it came at the height of his career when he was used to both commercial success and generally positive reviews, making the universal critical rejection of his directorial debut an unexpected and humbling experience that influenced his decision never to direct again.